Okay, well, I suppose we should get started. So, welcome to this week's SPC meeting. Here's your friendly reminder that this is being recorded. So, let's start with somebody maybe looking to help with note taking. Any volunteers?
I will do that, except I'm about to, well, except for when it comes time for me to make my own report.
You got it. I'll try to back you up then. Okay. Let's see. Oh, and Eric has joined in here, and hopefully others will be joining shortly. We will go ahead and get started. So, quick review of action items from last time. I have added an item to our issue tracking tool for the e-NABLE Web Central application. We're going to be adding in a solicitation for the newsletter opt-in within our registration process. So we'll gather that approval when people go through the sign-in process for the application. So that's been captured and will be done. John was to provide device family tree to Gary. Unfortunately, Gary couldn't join us today, but hopefully he'll be reading this and see all the links that you put in here. Right. So it looks like he's got everything he needs there. And we've got a bunch of notes, which I won't read out loud. I'll let anyone who cares to go through those. Okay, Gary had an action item of filling out the Handopedia to include attribution and history. We'll take a quick look here. Derived from, I see inspired by and derived from. I don't see attribution history, so I'm going to assume that's something he's still working on. John, coordinate a meeting with Chris Kraft regarding the handchallenge.com program. How'd that go?
Went great. I had about an hour with them earlier today, and they've delivered 200 hands to India, 40 to Nigeria, 20 to Venezuela. They are expanding. They have the, I think, lovely idea of a market, if you will, where devices, individual devices, can be visible and people can, quote, buy them for the cost of shipping. They want it to be very clear that they're not selling the devices, but they're going to use the same platform they're using to sell T-shirts to make it easy for people to say, I'd like one of these for my kids, and I'll pay for the shipping to come to it. They've really got quite a thing going. They do indeed have a list of 800-some schools, and they have agreed to join us at these meetings in the future. Probably not both of them any given week, but probably one of them most weeks. And we also talked through the possibility of beginning to do some research and tracking, either retrospectively on the 200-some hands that have already been shipped, or on the, putting some kind of a tracking protocol on the devices that people order from the marketplace. So that was good, and they're doing wonderful stuff, and they're all very much in the same spirit of what we're doing. And I think we will be illuminating each other's activities and then looking towards synergies.
Okay, that sounds great. So I'm adding a to-do for myself to add Chris Kraft to our SPC invite list. And who's the other individual?
Sarah Haight. I just CC'd you a little while ago on an email with both of them.
Gotcha. And Sarah, I'm sorry, what was her last name?
H-A-I-G-H-T.
Got it. Okay, so I've got an action item for that, so I don't forget. Okay, and then I had a to-do of creating a list of candidate experts for the e-NABLE Web Central app. Something I discussed briefly with Alex and Joe. I have not actually created a list. I'm not even sure that I know a fraction of the people who probably belong on that list. So maybe what I can do is just create a spreadsheet or something where we can start gathering names and then ask for other people to help me out with that. The idea is here is to find people with, what we consider the role that we're calling expert is somebody that has considerable experience with a wide range of the various e-NABLE designs. They've worked with recipients. They understand the fitting process, the sizing process, and who can provide guidance and advice throughout that process. So the idea here was to create a list of people that could kind of be our starting experts as we gather others. So I will. I'll leave that on the list for next time. I haven't done anything with it yet. Maria wasn't able to join us today, but she was going to help write a statement about the LimForge situation, leaving the community. So she was going to try to help take that off Jen's plate. I don't know if she's done anything with that or not, so I'll just leave that on for next time. Skip, you were going to work with Maria on writing up protocols for testing the gripper hand.
Yes, and I have not made progress on that yet. I'm still stuck with trying to reach a level of development that I'm ready to publish the next iteration. And Eric has been helping me with the appearance by smoothing out the surface using Mesh Mixer, and that progress with that is looking so good to me. I'm delaying and publishing what I have already. So hopefully I'll be back next week about this time, and within a few days after that I should get something published. Great. And that will include you know, the usual kinds of things that you put in a Thingiverse publication.
Great.
To for evaluation and so forth, and I'll work with Maria on building that up for what she needs.
Okay, John did post a message to the community about these SPC meetings, and I have now taken over that responsibility. So each week I will post the notes and the recordings. So I did do that for our last meeting, and I will do it after today. And the last one is mine also. This was to set up a discussion with Skip about the gripper hand, and we have not done that yet. I didn't reach out to you this week, Skip. I'm sorry, but it sounds like you were pretty busy anyway. So can we shoot for next week on that?
Yes, indeed. I'm away from home right now.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll reach out to you by email and see what we can set up there. Okay, so moving on to our normal agenda for individual updates. We'll start with John, and I'll try to take some notes for you here while you talk.
Well, I got an email. I got an email from Bridget from Google.org, who was the person we had been working with back in the old pre-ECF days. And apparently, Google.org continues to provide some support to LimForge, but in an independent development, at Google I/O's meeting yesterday, I think, Susan Wojcicki of YouTube called out Google for its, incredible creation myth and subsequent development. And apparently they unleashed several new services and did a fundraise. And the result is that she writes me to say that there's a $50,000 gift meant to support the community stuff. And was it clear what organization related to the community should accept it? And the answer is not clear, but there are several, and we will be quite happy to work it out. And this SPC is, I think, exactly the group to work it out with. If you'd like, I can do a little screen share of the 3-minute segment of Google I/O where they talk about it, and a little bit of the fundraising. It would take about 5 minutes out of our meeting, and it's quite colorful. Or I can just post it to the community as a separate thing.
Could you
Yeah, I think seeing whatever they have information they've given you will help us decide what to do with the funding and so forth.
Well, that's right. So I will post it, Jen, but with that little bit of encouragement, if you'll bear with me, I will try to show the video.
Is there a link that I can watch separately? Because I don't have...
Yes, I did. Oh, I forgot that that's another issue. Yes. And so, all right, so let's not, suffice it to say that the video has the vice president walking around on stage telling the wonderful story about Richard Van Ness. Sorry, no mention of Ivan Owen. And John Shull, and how this has grown and how they want to do more. And then there's another clip which shows a fundraiser which also includes some throwing of water balloons, and the notion that that the YouTube team decided to match 50-fold, maybe 500-fold the money raised in the water balloon escapade. So they got some good fun and games, and we're going to get some resources which you have to figure out how to use well and responsibly. It's not completely clear how they want the money to be spent. They're interested in, but they're clearly interested in the communitarian stuff. She mentioned, and we will be put in touch with the right person. They've noticed the chapters seems to be the next, pardon the expression, chapter in the evolution of our community, and that educational outreach was something of particular interest. I think the real question for this group is who should talk to the relevant people at YouTube and at Google. And while I'm happy to do it, I will also defer to my esteemed counsel to see who they want to delegate. I did ask whether fiscal sponsorship with a 501c3 would also be qualified, as opposed to giving directly to a 501c3 such as e-NABLE Outreach, which she had mentioned as one possibility. And she said, yeah, all possible. So that's my news. And
Well,
to me, that's big news.
I'll go ahead and put in my vote. I would vote, John, that it makes sense for you to talk to them. You have the most experience with those kinds of discussions and interactions. With regards to the funding, that'll take more discussion. I think there's a lot of things that we could, discuss as far as how that could be used, helping people to get the materials they need, helping people to get filament, etc. But let me be the first to say that I hope we will also consider finding a way to provide some additional support to the hard work Jen is doing with enablethefuture.org. I know there's a lot of people doing hard work with the community, but I don't think anybody puts in as many hours on a week-to-week basis as Jen. It's like a full-time job for her that she's not getting paid for. So I would love to see some way of working that into the program.
Great. I appreciate the feedback, and I agree. Yeah, so they're so I'm sorry, Jeff?
Are you off in the air?
Yes, I'm on the air.
I wasn't sure.
Okay, so let's come back to that. You're going to post the video to the community, John?
I will post the video. I will accept your mandate to pursue the discussion. I will vow to try to be transparent and impartial, even as we, work together to figure out what I think are several different levels of question. One is, what is the financial mechanism by which we accept the money? Secondly is, how do we figure out where will the money go? But that will probably open up a third question of how exactly do we distribute the money and track it. And
I'd like to jump in and offer to be part of the conversation. The chapter work that Joe and I have been doing for the last year and a half. Well, I started about 2 years ago getting chapters going. I'm contacted daily by different chapters. I'm following them all on Facebook. I can give kind of a generalized idea of which chapters are the most in need. And I'm also working with teachers and robotics clubs, working on getting some curriculum for testing for us for the fall. So I would really like to potentially be part of the conversation.
okay. I'll follow up with Bridget and say that both of us would be happy to have the next conversation with the people at Google. I think, Jen, that the first question is just going to be the mechanical question.
Mm-hmm.
And they may just want one point of contact, but I'll find out.
Okay.
Okay, other updates, John?
I had some, but frankly, they were blown away by this development that just came in a half an hour ago. If I remember, I'll come back.
Okay, sounds good. So Jen, you're up next. What updates do you have for us?
Oh, I have a bunch of stuff. Next Tuesday, the folks from FreeSync Media are coming to Ivan and Maya's home to film us and get kind of the e-NABLE story in a documentary form. You can find their video. I'll put a link in a second. They did the viral video, like an 8-minute documentary on Johnny Manthey, the bionic arm guy that we all met in at Johns Hopkins, who's worked with Dr. Chi. And so they're going to come and kind of get documentary video of what I do all day for e-NABLE. And then they're going to follow Ivan around and see kind of his, daily life at the university and what he works on at home and his various projects. And then from here, they are going to go to Michigan and visit the father-son team who are making hands there and follow them around for a day and kind of see how it went from an idea to now there's families making these for themselves. And the good news is it's only going to be a beautiful video. I've seen a bunch of their work already, but it's also going to be featured as an official Facebook video. So Facebook will be promoting the video starting in June. So it will be huge. So we need, for the next 2 weeks, I am going to scramble to get the enablingthefuture.org website vamped up and as much resources as possible that we can get on there. Put in as many of the devices that we haven't got listed yet on there that you guys think should be on there. Any other helpful things that people who are going to hear about us might need. I could really use some help figuring out what those things might be. And if you guys want to take a look at the autoresponders I have for the various email addresses for, info@enablingthefuture.org and help me come up with a better response so that I don't end up with a billion emails to answer, that would be amazing. But I think that we're part of what they're going to be filming is me talking about how we aren't just doing hands anymore, that we're trying to get our community to focus on doing more than hands and figuring out how we can harness this amazing group of minds to come up with potential new ways to help. So that's that.
That's great.
I just visited a high school here about 40 minutes from my house this week. It was a classroom for anatomy lessons. The teacher teaches anatomy and body systems, and she's created some amazing curriculum that she's going to work with me on over the summer, where she had them learn. She had them making models. So they started out with a little project where they had to make the inner workings of the fingers, and then she threw a bunch of stuff on the table and told them they had to come up with their own prosthetic device that functioned. And she gave them each team. They were broken down into teams. And each team had a different goal that their prosthetic had to accomplish. Like one of them had to be able to pick up a dollar bill. One of them had to be able to hold a certain weight. And these things were made out of popsicle sticks and duct tape and springs and rubber bands, and they were functional. And a lot of them were elbow driven or shoulder harnesses.
Wow.
So she invited me in to take photos of those designs. So that's I'm working on editing those. And then she asked immediately with, well, after that, they're building, they've got, I think, 7 or 8 teams, and each team is working on building a different one of our designs. So there's Team Raptor, there's Team Cyborg Beast, there's Team Phoenix, there's Team Talon, Team Osprey, Team Odie. And each team is responsible for working together to put the devices together based on just instructions. And then she's like, what do we do with this next? And I was like, what you do next is you help me come up with curriculum for testing, because you've got all of these devices now in your classroom, and that's exactly what we want. So she's going to help me over the summer, along with another teacher who does robotics. And they're going to come up with a kind of a curriculum for K through 12 for the various testing that we are wanting to do, and come up with ideas with the engineering classroom that is also at that same school to create kind of a lesson plan, print out 3 of these designs, do all these different testing, and it'll be kind of like the same thing that they're doing where they have a Team Cyborg Beast, and that team puts their hand through all the same tests as Team Talon does, and at the end they come together and they compare notes, and then they give us the feedback. So that's what I'm working on, and I'm helping Jeremy make 1,000,001 badges for the e-NABLE Web Central, and going to be working on some more badges for getting ready for the fall with whatever ends up coming up with this new curriculum.
Great. Good stuff.
Can I circle
Amazing.
back on a few points?
Certainly.
What was that?
I asked permission to butt in again and follow up on a few things. So coincidentally, we're gearing up to do our summer program here at e-NABLE, the British school here. And in conversations with different heroes and in conversations with Jeremy and with Peter and so on, we were thinking of doing something that in retrospect is sounding similar to what you just described, namely have our summer class that we're doing here, building and comparing 3 different devices, probably the Phoenix and the Osprey, and I think the third was to have been a Ripperhead thing. But just sort of to do a comparative parallel build among various teams and to try to evaluate them for along some sort of comparable rounds. So, Jen, I would love to sync up with you on that. Oh, the flexing hand.
I had sent out a document. I've got it in my Google folder where I started jotting down different potential tests, and I believe Eric helped put some information in there too about the different lessons that can be learned, and the different kind of physics and different things like that. So I'll go see if I can
find it. Also, when you send that, send some notes about your timetable. We're going to be doing this starting around July 1st.
Okay.
So the second point is I want back to Chris Kraft and Sarah Haight. So Hand Challenge is one arm of a new 501c3 called Different Heroes, which is the organization that has the 800 schools, et cetera, et cetera. And this summer, they're going to shift their basic practice from the Raptor to the Phoenix, something we discussed last week, but this is coincidental. And they're going to have Chris's kids redo those wonderful kid-based tutorials that they did. So that could well also be something that we can both use in our various school-related programs. And Jen, since you're talking about developing curriculum, you should probably compare notes with Sarah and Chris about what they've got.
Yeah.
So there you go. I did remember the other large topic I wanted to just mention. It won't be long, but here it comes. I got an email just recently from Jen Huger from opensource.com. who made one of those really nice videos about us. And she invited me to write an article for opensource.com entitled something, e-NABLE 4 years later. And that's, you know, that gets a lot of exposure. It's a very classy publication, and it seems to me that it might be a really good opportunity for us to do what we've sort of been bopping around about, which is to sort of try to tell our own story circa 2017 about where we are and where we're going. And certainly the expansion for not just prosthetics, as well as our ability to write a good narrative about the history of the expanding movement and ecosystem and put the ECF Limb Forge story in context is an opportunity. Jen, maybe you and I should co-author that, but it's the other topic that just emerged.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I think us together would be great.
Excuse me. I yield the floor.
Okay, quick clarification on, you mentioned under different heroes that they're moving to the Phoenix Hand. Does that mean the Hand Challenge program is going to be linking people to the Phoenix?
The Hand Challenge will become Phoenix-based, not Raptor-based.
Okay.
And of course, it will turn out to be relevant to you, Jeremy.
It will. So that's good to know. That was one of the things that I had, I think, later on the agenda. So that's good to hear. Okay, moving on then. Jen, did you have any other updates?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Was there anything anybody needed to have me do?
Not that I've come across yet, but we'll give you a shout out if we come across anything.
Okay.
So I'm up next on the list. My update will be brief. e-NABLE Web Central development continues to go very well. Alex and I are working on that pretty much full time now to try to get a version out for people to start using by the end of the month. I think I mentioned in our last meeting that Alex is taking 2 weeks of vacation, so he'll be out of town starting June 3rd. So our goal is to try to get a version released for people to start using by the end of May. And it's aggressive, but we are on track for it so far. I think we'll be able to do that.
That means 11 days.
Yeah, I know. I know. So we are making fast progress, and I think we'll be able to get it done. But we shall see. Quick update regarding the Phoenix kits. Unfortunately, one of our suppliers has been delayed, and it's the folks providing the dental bands. So they've come back to us saying they need 1 to 2 more weeks before we will receive those, even though we ordered them over 2 months ago now. So unfortunately, that means we won't be able to start shipping until the beginning of June at this point. So we're a week or 2 behind schedule, but we will be shipping soon. See, Gary was not a... Sorry, John, do you have a question?
Yeah. Are the Phoenix... So I haven't looked carefully at the Phoenix Reborn, which doesn't use those dental boards.
That's correct.
How does that relate to the story you were just telling, that variant?
Well, the kits that we're building a single kit that contains all the materials to support all 3 of the Phoenix designs. So unfortunately, that means that we won't, even if you're making a Phoenix Reborn, we won't be able to ship the kits until we have all the supplies. But when we do start shipping, it will support all 3 designs. So Gary's up next, and he was not able to join us today, but he put a couple of notes in here. The e-NABLE News Desk stuff is in progress. He's got a slide deck, it looks like, that he's developing. He's working on setting up Confluence. It says that's in progress. As far as developing, he's working on developing some standards as far as what are the recommended e-NABLE devices for various situations in terms of, what are we considering e-NABLE canon, so to speak. He has developed a spreadsheet that is linked here called the Hendopedia, which is a work in progress that'll be ported into Confluence when it's ready. But it's a handy little reference of all the different designs and what their various states are, whether they're active or retired or recommended for retirement or experimental, etc. And he's working on weaving that information into a sort of a family tree, as I understand it. So that's a work in progress. He's also building a list of all the various applications, databases, websites that are tied in with e-NABLE. So that's another Google spreadsheet that's linked here, and he's building an inventory that again will be ported into the Confluence platform, but that is coming along. That's a work in progress as well. And then he talked about working with a retailer to hopefully get them to donate some consumer grade printers to the various chapters. So we'll let him provide an update on that next week. Looks like Joe wasn't able to join us today, but he is continuing to help us on e-NABLE Web Central. So we had another meeting. We're meeting every Thursday morning as a team now, Joe, Alex, and I, to go through, show Joe the progress that we've made on the app and gather feedback on any questions that have come up and work through various workflows. I have put together a detailed flow chart showing the various workflows of the application and how people move through that. If anybody's interested, I'd be happy to share that. But that has been shared with Joe, and he approved of what we had put together. So, again, everything is on track there. We're just working real hard to try to hit our deadline for our first release. That is going to be a very first release, by the way. We hope to get all the basic functionality in there to support, making a request for a device and getting matched with volunteers. And then, navigating through that process of getting a device. But a lot of the enhanced functionality will be developed in the month or two following that, once Alex is back from vacation. Let's see, 5 or more chapter apps. Oh, he's saying he's getting 5 or more chapter applications each week. So a lot of activity on the chapters front. Chapter meeting was well attended, he said, and that's the last update we have from Joe.
So those last 2 items, I think I remember from last week. I don't think there was another chapter meetup.
You're right. I think I left that on here. That's probably a mistake. So you're right. That is a little bit stale, that information.
Okay.
So I'll take that off since we do have that on last week's notes. You're right. Any word? Does Bob have any intention of joining us in these? I don't think he's ever attended an SPC meeting. Should I just take him off the list, or does anyone know anything?
Really not. His main contact is Maria.
Okay.
Who also has missed several meetings, but congratulations to Sarah on her graduation.
So why don't
I can't.
I'll leave him on here, and we can ask Maria about that next week then. It doesn't look like we have Shashi this week. He tends to be pretty busy. Skip, any updates for us this week?
No, nothing today. Thank you.
Okay. Eric, anything new to report?
I might have a grant coming in of about $4,000 or so to help supply arms to people in actually anybody who Joe needs. It's actually in collaboration with e-NABLE Outreach. So I should find out about that within the next couple days. But it looks good.
Can we ask you to
Grant is internal through my university. The president of the university is offering a community grant to work with community partners. So I said, e-NABLE.
That's terrific. And I'm going to facilitate management.
What was that?
I think that the president explicit blessing this man.
Yeah, we're figuring out all the waivers and risk management stuff. So that's almost done too on my end. So I can really start pumping out more devices very soon.
Very good.
Okay. Ro was not able to join us today, so that brings us to our usual agenda then. So the first item on here is to revisit the FAQ. We had a couple of discussions about this over the last couple of weeks, but our attendance was pretty sparse, so I'd like to revisit that. Let's see, we want to review the comments in the doc, and let me just touch on a couple of the items here that we can talk about when we look at that. Should we add suggestions for using proper terminology, for example, not referring to e-NABLE devices as prosthetics? So John suggested that we include an "Are these real prosthetics?" section in the FAQ. And I don't think I made a couple of additions to the FAQ, but I don't think I put that in. I forgot to check back to these notes here, so I still have to add that in. Should we add a suggestion for proper attribution? So the suggestion last time was, can we have a page on the Enable the Future website that shows the device family tree and lists who created each device, and that same page can include, suggestions for attribution. And I think everyone liked that idea, so I don't know, I guess I should, maybe I should transfer that into some kind of a to-do for somebody. I guess that kind of falls into, it sounds like Gary's kind of working on that, so I will wait for a progress update from him, and then we'll figure out how to get that incorporated into the website once it's ready. Need to add a section with guidelines for sharing our plugs for funding. We talked last week about some kind of a donation registry page, a list of people looking for donations. I don't know how that gets worked into the FAQ document, but it was mentioned here in context of that discussion. So with that, I wonder if we could take a minute just to look at the FAQ. The link is just up above, and I'm going to pull it up here since I'm recording my screen. So a lot of the comments have been addressed and incorporated at this point. So I think we're getting pretty close on this being something that's ready to be shared more widely. We've got some general information about what is e-NABLE, what's a chapter, what does enablingthefuture.org do. I added some additional details there that were taken actually from your site, Jen. You had a good section there that talks about, how it's morphed into a repository of tutorials and hand designs and support information, forums, et cetera, et cetera. So I just inserted some of that detail here.
Okay.
Is e-NABLE a nonprofit organization? So we talked about this last time, and I added in some starter content here saying that we are not, the community itself is not organized as a nonprofit entity. It's just a large community, a large group of volunteers who give their time and energy to support the work of e-NABLE. There are a number of independent nonprofit organizations associated with the work of the e-NABLE volunteer community, such as LimForge, e-NABLE Outreach, and I'd like to just list a few others here, but I don't know who they are. So if somebody could help me just maybe list a couple more examples here, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I can put a couple in there.
Okay. What is e-NABLE Outreach? There's only one sentence in here. I don't know if somebody wants to add a little more detail about that, or if I don't know. That was in there from before. So if somebody wants to add a bit more detail, that might be appropriate. I did add a section for what is the SPC, as we discussed last time. So rather than saying who speaks for e-NABLE, which is what was in there before, I took that out, and now it's what is the SPC. So I gave a little description of the Strategic Planning Committee and mentioned that it is open to anyone else who would like to participate. Suggested that they email Maria, who volunteered to receive those participation requests. So I'm including her email address here. If anybody would like to add any more detail about the SPC, please feel free. Again, this is just kind of starter content. Per our discussion last time then, I added in sections for who is Ivan Owen. I gave a brief description. Jen and others, please review what I put in there. I just kind of hobbled that together from information on your site. But please feel free to modify this. Again, it's just initial content. I've then got who is Jen Owen, and I provided a brief description there as well. Same thing, please feel free to edit. And I've got who is John Schull. Oh, that's right, John, I forgot that you wrapped things up with RIT. So yeah, please feel free to go through and update these sections that give an overview of Ivan, Jen, and John. I didn't really touch the rest of this. There's a whole section here about information for recipients, about what are the devices, how do I get one, do I need to work with a specialist, what's the warranty, hint, hint, there is none. Then there's a section for makers, about who designs them, I want to get involved, I have a printer, what do I do, etc., etc. So I'm not going to go through all this because there weren't any comments, so I take it that those sections are pretty much ready. Further down, there was a little discussion about do we want to keep using the first contact form, and we talked about that last time. And I think the determination that we made is that this is going to be replaced with the registration process within the e-NABLE Web Central app, and at this point we are hopefully only a couple of weeks away from letting people start to go through and start using that registration. So I think this is a pretty short-term issue here. I would say for right now, anybody who finds their way to that intake form, fine, but let's not, go out of our way to publicize that, because in the next couple of weeks we'll be able to start directing people to the e-NABLE Web Central app, and they can just register there and get their information into our database that way. We are adding into our registration process a question about whether you want to be on the newsletter email list. So then once that newsletter comes out, we can further publicize, the e-NABLE Web Central app and tell people to go there to enter their registration details and get themselves logged into the system. So I think that'll address that issue. I don't think there's much else in here in the way of comments. So I would simply invite those present here, as well as the broader community that might be watching a recording, to go ahead and review the FAQ and make any final comments, and let's work towards getting this finalized and shared. I assume it would make sense to share this through the enablingthefuture.org site, Jen. Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's pretty close.
I just want to ask whether we're sure we want the who is items, numbers 1, 2, and 3. For example, these days, I think there's an equally powerful argument for answering the question, who is Jeremy Simon, etc. Is it necessary to call out individuals or not, given how dynamic we are and how, in fact, there's a new cast of characters emerging who are doing wonderful work?
That's a good point, Sean. I mean, I think there are a lot of important people in e-NABLE, but I don't think they really need to be highlighted in an FAQ document. I think the reason behind these 3, as I understand it, was these are the 3 people that folks just happen to be asking about because, they've been highlighted a lot in media and various articles that have been written. And, so when questions come up, I think these are the 3 people that get asked about. So it made sense to highlight these 3 here. I certainly don't want to downplay anyone else's contributions, but I certainly don't think I don't think there's any large quantity of people asking about who is Jeremy or who is Joe, or although there's a lot of us doing very important work. I don't think we get raised to the level where people are asking about us and are recognizing the names and wanting to know our bios and profiles.
Well, I don't mind. We are frequent targets of all sorts of things. Because we're out there, I think one of the reasons Jeremy isn't asked about is because, for historical reasons, you're not put up front and center as much as as we have been. We could have a simple an approach to the nonprofit list and to the other list is, for example, we could have an item saying, who's who? And we can say there are a number of people, including A, B, C, D, and others. And as I'm suggesting for the nonprofits, we then provide a link to some kind of a listing, which can include many more people, including our various specialties. So
I've been actually thinking about potentially making our team or our core team kind of thing, like all the other folks have on their websites, where, we could put a picture of Ivan, a picture of me and John and Jeremy and Siri and Joe and Jeremy and all the people who are kind of founding members and who are doing the things that the people are asking about. The e-NABLE France is kind of its own little e-NABLE world now. They have their own matching system. There's various key people throughout the world in various chapters who I'm always sending media to. And, when somebody contacts me for a story about European something, I send them to my European team, who is always on point and always praising the global community and not just the work that they are doing. So we have some amazing evangelists out there, and I think it would be beneficial to kind of make a team page.
I think that's right, and I think that then referring to the team page in the FAQ is better than
Right.
providing a small list of biographies in the FAQ.
Okay, I like that idea too.
Great.
Okay, I've added that as an action item for you, Jen, to take the lead on an Our Team page, though of course we'll be happy to help with that. And maybe I can assist there as well, since I already have access to the site. So let me know if I can assist you with that.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm italicizing number 5, and I'm italicizing 7 to 9, because I think they're both going to be collapsed in a comparable way. One will be some kind of a listing of organizations, nonprofits, etc., and the other one will be the team page. And once that evolves, we'll know what to do with the FAQ.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, back to our agenda then. Moving on, our next item here is related to getting some clearer guidance around e-NABLE devices. We've talked about the fact that right now we just kind of have a laundry list of devices in no particular order, and we want to be able to provide a little bit better guidance as far as what might be a recommended device if you're just getting started, what device types might work best for different situations or conditions, etc. So I think that goes back to what Gary is working on. Does anybody have anything they'd like to discuss along those lines, or should we leave that for next week when Gary's back with us?
I think doing it next week would be good, especially when we also have Chris Kraft or Sarah. Because I'm not clear about how whether e-NABLE Web Central is going to have something analogous to their device market. But both of you are now talking about sort of a cycle of follow-ups and comparing notes and then seeing if there's some consolidation or just some shared standards or metrics would be useful.
Sounds good. Okay. So we'll revisit that, and hopefully you have Chris's input next week, or Sarah's. Badges. So there's been a lot of discussion throughout the last couple of weeks over email about badging systems. We've been using Credly, and we've actually issued about 500 badges already through the Credly system. So kudos to Jen for getting that all running and issuing all those. We are incorporating that badging platform into the e-NABLE Web Central app extensively. So we're actually using the Credly API to query to see who has which badges. Jen has, over this last week, created a bunch of new badges at our request for each specific design and each role. So for example, there's now a badge for somebody who has fabricated a Raptor Reloaded, or somebody who has assembled a Raptor Reloaded, or similarly somebody who's fabricated a Phoenix, or somebody who's assembled a Phoenix. So based on the design and based on the role, you can get a badge specific to that. And so our app can now query for those specific badges and use that to determine who is approved for each of the different device types and each of the different roles for those devices. So that's been built into e-NABLE Web Central. Meanwhile, Maria was suggesting a switch to the Badger.io platform. I think we're going to have to kind of leave that discussion until she's able to join us next week. I'll be honest, I'm kind of hoping that we don't switch, because I think there's already been a good deal of traction with Credly. And historically, when we kind of switch between platforms or, try to shut one down and bring up another, I mean, we already don't have very good adoption historically with these kinds of tools and platforms in e-NABLE. So it seems like we've got some really good traction going with Credly. It seems a shame to shut it down and try to switch over and ask people to register new badges on a new platform. And then just speaking from a developer's point of view, I looked at the API documentation from Badger, and it's just really hard to understand. I can't see how to get it to do what we need, and we'd have to rewrite all our code. So I guess we'll have to wait and get Maria's input on that next week. I'm not sure I understand why she seemed to favor that so strongly. So I guess we'll just leave that on the agenda for next time.
Jeremy, would it be beneficial to have a third badge for each of these? So you've got the assemble, fabricated, and then like expert badge, like they're an expert in that one because they've done both. So in order to get the expert badge, they would have to first get the other two.
Well, that's a real interesting idea. Let me bring that up with Alex and Joe and figure out how that would play into our workflows. We are going to have an expert badge, but we were thinking of it more generally as an expert being somebody that has familiarity, across a wide range of these devices, rather than tying it to specific devices. But I could see the value in doing that too. Somebody that has an extensive level of experience with a particular design. And we also talked about, for that matter, some other roles that would be specific to each design. For example, a customization role or a fitting role. We just haven't gotten to the point where we've developed that functionality in the application yet. So I think there are a number of additional badges we're going to want to create. We're just not ready to incorporate those into the app yet. But let me talk that over with them. I like that idea of maybe an expert level badge at a per design level. And we'll get back to you and see how it makes sense to go about doing that.
So what we could do is have there be an expert badge for each design, and then to get the e-NABLE expert badge, they have to show that they are an expert in at least 3 different designs.
I like that. Yeah.
It okay. Could be, because that way you could differentiate between. So you've got 100 people who are experts in making the Raptor Reloaded, but maybe you only have 50 people who are experts in Raptor Reloaded, Phoenix, and Team Unlimited ARM.
Right.
And so those would be more likely to be mentors for schools or robotics teams or other chapters.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's a good idea. So let me bring that up with the team, and we'll get back to you on how to go about doing that. But I like the idea. I think it's great.
Okay.
Okay, so next up we have the topic of metrics regarding the effectiveness of e-NABLE devices. And there's already been a good deal of discussion around this today. Both Jen and John have programs coming up in the summer, it sounds like, where students are going to help us come up with some testing criteria and give us some good data back. So sounds like there's good progress being made there. Let's see, Jen, you put together that document with a lot of ideas relating to that program. You're going to send a copy of that to John, right?
I put a link to it up here in wherever my thing is.
Oh, okay. Earlier up in the notes?
Yeah, it's up there.
Got it, okay.
Sorry, up there where?
It's up under the status updates under Jen Owen earlier in the agenda.
Let's see.
You can put it back down. You can put it down in this thread too, though.
Oh, well, as soon as I find it.
I got it, John.
You got it covered?
I got it, yep.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll be soliciting feedback through e-NABLE Web Central, so we'll contribute some additional data that way. Let's see. Yeah, some of these other notes were from last week. Eric, I know, did some work on measurements of strength, and John had some discussion with Adam Arabian about metrics. Anyone have anything to add to this topic here? Any further discussion worthwhile at this point?
Just that it's going to be relevant to, I think, the summer program that Jen is working on in Washington and that we're likely to do here.
Definitely. Okay. The next item up is probably one for Gary. It's about the newsletter, so I'm not sure there's much. I know there's not much I can tell you. Does anybody else here have any info about progress on that?
I know that Rich is eager to get a reply from Gary.
Okay.
I'm guessing he will.
Okay. Sounds good. And then the last item on the agenda for now was the note about how to bring additional members into the SPC. I've just been including that note, if you've seen the posts I'm making weekly in the community with the recording and the link to the notes, I'm simply including an invitation there. to say, check out the recording, and if you feel like there's something that we're not representing adequately, please email Maria, and I'll continue to include those invitations in those postings. So I don't know that we need to do anything else on that front right now. We are bringing in Chris Kraft and Sarah as well. So, and we also invited Jen, I don't recall her. What was the last name?
Mankoff.
Menkoff, thank you. So she's been invited to these meetings as well. I don't think she was able to join this week, but hopefully we'll have her next time. Does anybody have anything to add to the agenda that I didn't catch here? Okay. Well, I will go ahead and clean up the notes, get the action items together, and I will share the recording and notes as usual once those are ready a little bit later today.
Terrific.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy.
See you next week, same
Goodbye.
time.